4. And we are live. Guys, welcome to the Bassin Magazine podcast. Bassin Magazine is the official magazine of the Weekend Angler. I'm Jay Angel. I'm going to be your podcaster. Brad Yole is busy. He will most likely not be making it this evening. First of all, I'd like to tell you guys, Bassin Magazine is looking for a advertising rep. If you'd like to take advantage of this opportunity, if you feel you're qualified, please go to bassinonline.com, Bassin Online, BASSIN online.com. Go to contact us, and you will talk to Brad Yole directly that way. Or you can go to Brad at freshwatermediagroup.com. Brad at freshwatermediagroup.com. There's Cajun Rob already, man. Good to see you, Cajun Rob. Cajun Rob with us tonight from Southern Kentucky. One of my biggest fans and a good friend of mine. With me tonight, I have Brandon Ackerson. Did I say that correct, Brandon?
You got it. Close enough anyway.
Brandon Ackerson from Oklahoma. And we're going to talk about fishing in Missouri. And what I want to hear, how is fishing the gin clear waters of Missouri different from fishing the stuff that I'm used to down here in southern Louisiana, or even Brandon's used to in Oklahoma, where at least they get 2 feet of visibility, not inches like I do in southern Louisiana. So, Brad, where was the most recent place you fished with clear water?
I just got back from Bull Shoals fishing the World Fishing Tour. It's their third event of the year. And it was clear to me, but the way the locals talked, they said it was dirty to them. But you could see, where I was fishing, I could see 6 foot easily. I think if you went down closer to the dam, you could see even deeper, 12 to 15. And then further up the river, it dirtied up more, 2 foot or so. But it was a really cool lake. A lot of buckbrush around that lake.
Buckbrush, man. I bet you have that in Oklahoma, don't you?
Man, we used to have a lot of willow trees and a lot of brush around the banks, but over the years, the more houses that get put in, people don't want to look at that on their waterfront, and they just clear them out more and more every year to where, we're mostly just rocks, docks and rocks on Grand Lake anymore.
What a shame, man. What a shame.
Yeah, all you hear about, the old guys talking about back in the day, man, it was flipping willows and willow trees this and willows everywhere. And now you're lucky. It's got a flood if the water's going to touch the willows for the most part. There's a few areas still left, but most of the lake is just docks and rocks.
Jeez, I have a definite opinion about that. I don't want to talk about that during the podcast, but if you're going to turn the lake into an aluminum bathtub, you're not going to get it. It's no longer a natural system.
Right. Well, a lot of guys, they pull up to the bank and cut a tree, then go sink a brush pile and do that for 50 years. There's their tree left to cut.
Yeah, buckbrush is what people catch those giant fish out of in Bussy Break, Louisiana.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They throw Senkos to the buckbrush, and if you can pull a 13-pound bass out of buckbrush, you're good.
That's so last year in the Big Bass Bash, the guy that won threw a Senko up in the trees because we were flooded at the time.
Yes.
And, caught I think it was a 7-pounder. Caught him $100,000 fish.
Oh.
Yeah. He said he'd been fishing offshore the whole time because, there's so many boats in that thing that the banks just beat up, and he never got any bites, and he went up to the bank and flipped in a tree and caught the winning bass, $100,000.
$100,000 bass. Is the Big Bass Bash, is that the one that they have a weigh-in every hour?
Yeah, they have, I think it's every 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, every 2 hours.
In Alabama, they have one of those with 1,000 boats.
Oh yeah, they expect 2,500 entries Now you can fish 3 to a boat in that, but it's Anglers in Action, Big Bass Bash, same people. They have it at Lake of the Ozarks and at Grand Lake, and the Lake of the Ozarks one is just massive. It's like twice the size as Grand Lake apparently. And
But clear water. How do you differ your presentations
well,
than if you were fishing Grand Lake?
for the most part, I mean, unless you're fishing that buckbrush, but like we were also live scoping while we were there, deep
Sure.
water under balls of shad and that kind of thing. And so I'm not a spinning rod guy, but at bull shoals and table rock, that's all I have in my hand all day is a spinning rod for the most part until I
Why
go
is
hunting
there?
for a giant. Well,
I know
because
the answer to this.
I'm live scoping clear water and I got to downsize my line because they can see so well. And generally, you got to downsize your bait as well. But it just, I mean, it's, and I say that, but at the same time, I only downsized to 10-pound test. I still want to be able to control them.
Okay.
I know there's guys that they'll go out there and they'll use 6 and 5 and 7 and they probably do generate more bites, but they also break off. You're I can't fish
So
6 test around flooded timber. I'm just there's no
no, you
way.
can't.
Like to me,
You
I'm risking more by doing that just because I can't control that fish. It goes where it wants, and it still does on 10-pound test too. Like you hook a 3-pounder, and you got your drag set. It's strip and drag like it's an 8-pounder, until it comes up, and you're like, oh,
yeah.
that doesn't even call.
Well, I was born and raised up in the Northland, and I very rarely ever used anything more than 6-pound test unless I was fishing flooded timber.
Yeah,
If I was
yeah,
fishing flooded timber, that's the only time I'd get out the bait casters that could handle the bigger line. And when I first started fishing flooded timber, I still used my 6-pound test until I learned the hard way. It hurts to lose a 6-pound bass.
oh yeah, especially on tournament. I mean, that's a hard. I
Yeah.
mean, we saw Jason Christie last week lose that 7-pounder that would have won him the tournament on the final day. Like those hurt.
That does hurt. That does hurt. But if you change your line all the time and you're using superior equipment and making sure your eyes aren't dinged and making sure your line isn't, even with new line, you still have to check it. If you're fishing rocks, and that's what I primarily fished up north was rocks or weed lines.
Right, right. Well, and that's one thing I've noticed about fishing lighter line like that in clear water. I retie a lot. I mean,
Yes.
if I catch a fish over 3 pounds, I retie just because that knot's just getting stretched and stretched, and
Yes.
it'll
So so
it
you
eventually.
so you spend a lot of time retying, and
Oh,
you just have to be careful, and also, but also up north, I'd fish a lot of riprap, and after you hook into a fish, you pull them off the rocks, and then you got open water to fight them in.
uh huh, uh huh. Which
Down
which
here,
there
go
at
ahead.
both where we were catching them, it was kind of on the brush line. So when you hooked one, it was generally out of way from the buck brush. Now later on in the day, once we had a good limit, uh, we started throwing bigger swim baits, and we were throwing it up in the buck brush, dragging it through, trying to find that 4 or 5 pounder. And for 2 days, we had 1464 as a team event in the first on the first day, and missed the cut by point 0.4. And then on the second day,
Ooh.
we missed the cut. We had 1482 and missed the cut by 0.14. So the
Oh man.
World Fishing Tour, it's a multi-day entry, or
Sure.
so there's 5 day ones, and you can qualify for championship day any of those days. And so we went and tried. We couldn't go until the last 2 days, and we tried both days and was really close both days, but just couldn't get it done. Couldn't find the 4-pounder.
Just couldn't find a 4 pounder. Huh? Wow. Yeah.
I don't know where they hide in that lake because it all looks good with that buck brush, but we could not find one. And those guys that were catching 17 and 18 pound bags, they were, I mean, I don't know if they were fishing dirtier water or what they were doing, but they all had 4 pounders, and we that was the only thing missing out of our bag both days was a kicker.
That's tournament fishing.
That's been my tournament history for the last month and a half now.
You
Just
zigged when you should have zagged, you know.
oh yeah, well just being right there on the cut line, being like last BFL at Table Rock, I missed the check by three, you know, and then I had a tournament the weekend before that on Eufaula where we missed a check by like point 0.2, and I've just been right there for like the last month and a half, and can't get over the hump.
Man, if you're right there, sooner or later you're gonna hit.
Well, I started off on fire. Like we won, me and my team partner won the World Fishing Tour on Table Rock in February, and then I went to Lake of the Ozarks for a BFL like 2 weeks later and got third in that, and so started off doing pretty good. I got like 24th at the BFL on Grand, like everything was going good, and then all of a sudden hit that wall, and it just so close now, but can't get the job done.
Okay, let's say you're on a lake you've never been to before. Let's Beaver Lake,
I've
since you
never been.
like those. Yeah, you've never been to Beaver Lake. It's similar to Lake of the Ozarks in those Missouri reservoirs.
Hmm.
And you're gonna target shoreline, which is where the most you're gonna shoreline structure. What would be your go-to confidence lure?
It just depends on the time of the year, obviously. But for the most part, when I'm just running around looking for bites on a new lake, I'll have a moving bait. My confidence moving bait's a chatter bait or a square bill. And then I'll have some little flipping baits, and being beavers, clean, clear water. I'll have some kind of small flipping bait, lightweight or a Cinco, and then but more than likely I'll probably just be idling around looking for bait first, trying to find
Your
bait or structure, and then throw whichever bait I feel's the one to be throwing at them. But time of year matters a lot too.
okay, yeah. So in the summer, like we're in now, so you have your search lures and you'd have your finesse lures.
Yeah. So like post spawn, if I'm there first thing in the morning, I'm probably gonna be throwing a top water, looking for feeding fish, and then from that, if it's a sunny day, go look for shade lines or docks or brush or something to flip around in, find them hiding. Uh, like I said, I've never been to Beaver, so I don't know what. I mean, I assume it's mostly rock. So I've probably spent a lot of time idling around looking for brush piles, trying to
Probably,
figure out.
it's a lot like Lake of the Ozarks. It's it's got bluffs. It's really clear. A lot of the bass are on the trees that have fallen down. Right next to the shore,
Oh, okay, yeah. So
and the rock that's fallen off the bluffs.
yeah, so I'm definitely gonna have a flipping bait rigged up and just be going down the bank looking at laydowns and trying to figure out what color they want to key in on, and that kind of thing. I mean, if the wind kicks up and it gets cloudy, you roll a spinner bait through those laydowns or anything like that, and should be able to generate bites.
Okay, so that's your confidence. Your confidence thing is actually a two-pronged approach. It sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. I'm always trying to catch them moving. I don't like to slow down, and I love a chatterbait, but if I'm targeting brush and that kind of thing, I'll switch to a spinner bait. Uh,
What do you put on the back of a chatterbait?
a Zaco.
There you go.
Yeah, I use a Zaco. I used to use just a little swim bait, but I started using that Zaco, and I really like it. I like how it skips because
Boy, I
it's
tell you, if you have a bluegill colored Zaco
mm-hmm.
with a bluegill colored chatterbait, that is just beautiful coming through the water.
Yeah, yeah. And being from Grand, you skip a lot of docks, and that Zaco just skips really well.
Yes, yes. Being from around here, I can skip the Zaco underneath the cypress trees.
Oh
Or
yeah.
you might have to skip it 30 feet. And what you're trying to do, you're trying to hit that. You're trying to hit the shore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The same here, only no cypress. You're skipping dock cables and that kind of stuff because we got a lot of docks and a lot of cables, and that's why everybody hates coming here. That's why
Yeah,
we
but remember that's a wall. You're not allowed to cast over it.
do what?
No, I'm being hostile here.
Oh,
It's a wall.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Let's not talk about that.
It's not a wall here.
Yeah, I agree with you though, man. Yeah, you've got to be able to skip that. You've got to be able to get it back underneath everything, and man, it's just beautiful when you can get it when you can get it underneath the cypress trees and get back way in back in that shadow in the middle of the day. That's the only place you're going to find feeding bass. Brandon.
Yeah. Well, and with the way these lakes get so much, yeah,
You were saying
yeah, I
about
got
the
you.
lakes getting pressured.
I said with the way the lakes are pressured so much now, you got to figure out where to put your bait where you don't think anybody else has put their bait. So I mean, like this weekend we have Falcon Grands Challenge, which is going to be like 600 boats on Saturday, and then
Jeez.
we have the Nichols on Sunday, which is 250 boats. So by Sunday afternoon, these fish are going to be wore out. Be
It's
going
almost
down the
getting
bank
too much.
begging for a bite.
It's only going to, man. So you're going to have over 800 boats on that
Oh yeah,
lake.
yeah.
Wow. And that's
Yep.
in Missouri.
No, Grand Lake's in Oklahoma.
Oh, you said Grand Lake. Okay, yeah.
Oh, Grand Lake this weekend.
Wow.
Yeah, it's going to be a packed house for
How
sure.
big was Grand Lake?
I don't know the exact size. It's smaller than Lake of the Ozarks, uh, but I don't know how much shoreline we do have. I used to know, but I don't remember.
Is it configured like Lake of the Ozarks where there's just a million different little little coves you can get into?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's like I said, it's smaller, so the coves aren't necessarily as big. But we
It
do
doesn't
have,
have creek arms
we
that are
have
5 miles long. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we have four major creeks that feed the lake. Horse Creek and Duck Creek and Drowning and Honey Creek, where those are really big creeks, and then they have a lot of coves in them as well. And but it only takes to run from most of our tournaments go out of Wolf Creek, and it's only like a 25-minute run from that into the lake to the dam. Now you can turn the other way and go up the river and go another 25-30 minutes, but as far as the lake itself is only about 25 minutes from one end to the other.
Okay, so if you're on Grand Lake of the Cherokees, how would your how would your the way you approach the day as far as presentations, how would that let's say in the morning, first thing, how would you fish now that you're fishing that stained water, it's not dirty.
My plan for this weekend is probably start out with the top water because there's going to be a lot of fry garters and that kind of thing. So there should be some aggressive fish early. Uh, and then with the pressure that's going to be here this week, it's probably going to be slow dragging a jig around, like real slow, and probably skipping a Cinco back under docks and that kind of thing. And it's going to be slow and painful, I imagine. Hopefully the
Sure.
top water tide will fire up and we could put a limit in the boat real quick and then have all day to go find some big ones.
Find that 4 pounder.
Yeah, well, in the nickels you're gonna need 5 of them 4 pounders. It's
5 of
gonna
them 4 pounders, huh?
it's gonna take 20 pounds to win. It always does.
Somebody's gonna find those 4 pounders, huh?
Yeah. Well, you put 250 boats on any lake, somebody's gonna bring in a big bag. It doesn't
Wow.
matter Kentucky Lake or any lake. Somebody's gonna bring in 20 pounds probably.
Wow.
That's always been my thought too. It's like you got to beat the lake. It doesn't matter who you're fishing against, where you're fishing. Somebody's gonna catch 20 pounds. It doesn't matter what their name is. You got to be one that can go do that.
Oh yeah. So when you're dragging a jig, what kind of a jig are you using?
Man, I use there's a tackle shop here called Honey Creek Outdoors, and they make a little ball head finesse jig, like a 7/16 ounce.
Okay.
That's I'll drag it around with like a speed crawl on the back, and that's my go-to jig for most of the year. In the summer, or not in the summer, in the fall, I got another jig that I like to throw, but I don't like to tell anybody about it.
Okay. Colors for the summer?
Uh, I mean, most of the time it just depends on water clarity, but on Grand, I generally just throw a brown jig, uh, or any shad colored crankbait. You know, uh, green pumpkin is always a good color on Grand Lake for any flipping bait. Like green pumpkin is just probably the best color.
Our green pumpkin's good from Canada all the way down to Mexico. Yeah.
Yeah, it's natural. They eat
And
it.
even in Florida. Yeah.
Yeah, in Florida, I I like to throw a green pumpkin chatterbait in Florida in the grass.
Actually, Gary Yamamoto Bates just came out with some crazy thing, and Yama thing. I can't even pronounce it, but it's a big old chunk thing, 5/16 ounce piece of plastic, and they have a color called baby bass. Guys, check that out. I am not sponsored by Gary Yamamoto Bates, but that thing just looks
Is that
wow.
the one that kind of looks like a tube, but it's just a
Kind of
solid?
looks like this.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, solid chunk.
the spark plug. Just a big old chunk right here and a thing, and then this thing wiggles around and
Yeah,
oh, I, you know,
my team partner bought some of those when they first came out. He scooped them up.
one of the guys I work with, I could go and pick him up at his house and take him out to this remote site that we work at, and he called, "Come on, man, you got to come over to my boat. You got to see these things." And he pulled that thing out, and I'm like, "Why has nobody told me about this?" I talk to bass fishermen every single day. I have them on my show, and nobody told me about this.
They're always coming out with new stuff. I mean,
But that
oh,
thing is innovative, man. You know, you can, and it's almost
oh
like
yeah,
walking the dog with a soft plastic.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll jump around. Everybody's
Or
been into these swim baits though. These big glide baits. That's
yes, I
that's
love swim baits too.
I mean,
They're actually
Zal
cool.
just came out with a new swim bait, and then a buddy of mine, Josh Plades, he owns a clutch swim bait company, the glide bait, like the Darter and the OG, and
Speaking of
he can't make them fast enough.
Duo Realis makes some awesome swim baits. Yeah, the one time I can't find my swim baits.
That's something I'm definitely going to work on this year because I mean, if you've watched the last couple elite, those guys are just throwing glide baits left and right. It's something apparently we're all going to have to add to our arsenal.
Here we are. Oh, come on. I'm sure you have the same problem.
Oh yeah, too much stuff. Can't ever find anything.
Duo Realis.
Yeah, yeah.
Look at that thing. This is. I haven't caught any fish on this thing yet, but I've had them chase it.
So is that like one that you slow retrieve, or is that a fast retrieve?
I twitch it,
Okay.
and every time I've had one chase it, I've been just bringing it back to the boat, and it's hard to see them. It's hard to see something chasing in Louisiana, and
Right.
just here's like a 14-inch bass chasing it. I'm like, that thing's half your size. They just want it out of there,
They'll try and eat it.
But then I know he's there. He's not by himself. So then I start throwing my wacky rigs out there and catch them.
Yeah. Yeah, they're definitely popular. There's any of those glide baits. I mean, everybody, all these companies that are making them, they can't keep them in stock. As soon as they get inventory, it's sold out.
And just if I come up on a piece of water, it looks like prime real estate, and it looks like I'm not going to lose a $75 glide bait. I cast that.
Yeah, I know you want to throw it on like
I don't know.
You want to throw it on like 100-pound braid. They cost so much, but it doesn't work.
So I can bring up the bottom if I catch the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching a video yesterday. A guy is Brian Partak, I think is how you pronounce his name. Threw one of those clutch darters and it hit a cable and broke the tail off. That's a $250 bait.
Oh. Dang. Yeah. Oh well, you didn't buy it to look at it,
Right, and it works. So you got to throw it, and you got to throw it where they're at. So
my problem is I spend that much money, I usually don't catch a fish on it.
It's definitely an art to throwing those things. That's for sure.
Yes. You're right. It is different casting something like that than casting, a square bill, a 2-inch square bill. It's a different mindset. It feels different in your hand. If you have to.
Oh, and then, well, just the retrieve to get the bait to walk right and glide right, and then you got to figure out if it needs to be a fast, choppy retrieve or a slow glide, wide glide. Like,
I find everything's more exaggerated with the really big baits.
Yeah.
When growing up north, I watched my friends who muskie fished all my life and found myself doing the same thing they were doing. And those guys are in shape. Casting a 12-inch, the original muskie baits were actually made out of broom handles. It's funny. They caught a lot of muskies on those things, but they just got used to casting a 12-inch baits. And by the end of the season, by the time it started icing up, those guys were in shape.
Yeah, when those things weigh 4, 5, 6, 7 ounces.
Yeah, some of them weigh a pound, 16 ounces, Big old piece of plastic weighs 16 ounces. I mean, that's crazy.
Just finding a rod to throw that on.
Yeah, they used to look like broom handles back in the 70s, and now they're looking, 8 feet long, with looking like our rods, just a little bit thicker. And they were the original guys who were using, the 80-pound braid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they were the first people to figure out about braid. You know, I first time I hooked into a muskie on braid, that braid cut my finger to shreds.
I've never caught any muskies. I've caught some northerns, some pike.
Yeah,
Go up to, I've been to La Crosse, Wisconsin a couple times fishing the Mississippi. Man, I don't
oh,
know how
that's
many
fun.
frogs. I don't know how many frogs they stolen from me.
Oh yeah, since I've caught northerns my whole life, I was throwing. Actually, you know, I went up there as a co the first couple times, and I didn't throw one frog because you know my pro was casting frogs. So I looked around, saw weed mat 3 feet down, square bills.
Yeah.
Then I caught my first two on a square bill. Then I threw a Senko. Actually, back then I was sponsored by Pradco, so I threw the Yum dinger
Uh huh.
and rounded out and came in with five and qualified for the second day. I could not believe that. First time I ever fished a tournament. And my pro was like, "That's pretty darn good." You were like, there were only two co's that came in with a limit.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm not that good. He's like, "Well, you're better than all the other 60 co's who were here. The 60 co's who didn't qualify."
Yeah. If you catch a 5 fish limit as a co-angler, that's gonna move you way up for
Yeah.
sure. Most of the time, you'd be in the top 10 still today.
Well, La Crosse, Wisconsin just makes sense to me. You know, I grew up in that area. Well, not
Yeah.
in La Crosse. I mean, I grew up fishing that kind of stuff. You know, rivers,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of La Crosse just isn't like a river. It's like a huge lake.
Yeah.
Anything you want's there. If you want to fish river stuff, you can fish river stuff. You can go up the creeks and fish creeks and muddy creeks, and also you can fish. You know, the duckweed like you were with frogs.
Mm-hmm.
You can be out there with the pack.
Yeah. Big grass mats and all
Yep.
kinds of.
Anything you want is there, man. That's a heck of a drive for you.
Yeah, it's like 11 hours.
It's got to be 1,000 miles.
Nah, it's actually one of the closer tournaments, really. Like I said, it's like
Wow.
11 hours. As it was in the opens and shoot. Uh, it seems
But
like the opens always go to like Alabama, and that's always 11 or 12 hours. And,
but La Crosse has got to be as different from what you're used to as it can.
oh, it is different, but it's dirty water, so it's fun. You know,
It's it's not always dirty water. Sometimes that Mississippi River is beautiful.
yeah. Well, the first time I went, it was flooded. It was like
Oh,
7 feet high, and then the next time I
that ain't no
went,
good.
it was low. Like you couldn't even get back in a lot of those little canals or creeks. Like you just try and get in one, and you just stick it right in the sand.
And Mississippi River is flooded. It's just no good.
It
Doing
increases
it
how
was
you fish. There's a lot of
I
area.
do
That's
just. So, did you go to the backs of the creeks?
when the water was up, I'd go way back in the canals, yeah, in those creeks, and just go back there and poke around and find a little current break, and because the water was falling at the same time, it was flooded, but it was coming down, so there was
Well, if
plenty of.
it's coming down the creek, so the creeks were probably pumping clear then, huh?
Some of them were clean, some of them were muddy, just depending on which one
Man,
you go into.
if you can find a clear creek, wow. So let me guess, you found fish in the backs of the clear creeks and maybe right up on the shore if you can find a rocky shoreline.
Man, I found them all over the place there. It
Really?
place is full of fish, but they were moving every day because, like I said, it was falling and it was falling pretty fast. So if you could find some deep holes, you'd find fish, but they would be up in the shallow in the pads. I caught some in the pads. I caught some in duckweed. I caught some just flipping the bank, you know, in those little creeks where you'd go along. There'd be a little undercut in there, and one would be laying in there, and just they were. It wasn't hard to get bit, but it was hard to find the right ones, like always.
Did you lock through it all?
No, I didn't lock. The
I
sec the second time I went, I locked up and went into Lake Onalaska.
Yeah, Lake Onalaska is a good one. I fished tournaments in Lake Onalaska. I just I've heard too many horror stories because if there's a barge trying to lock through, you're not a priority. It's not that you're second priority. You're just
I
not a priority.
well up there. So when the year it was flooded, you didn't want to lock because those barges had been held up for so long downriver that they were just in a line coming up the river. But
Yep.
the I went that the water was low, there wasn't much barge traffic. And if you did have to wait, as long as you didn't cut it close, like last minute, you didn't have to worry about anything. You was gonna get through.
See, that's just a yikes. I guess I'm just way too nervous for that. That would just
Well, at least those locks don't take very long. You know,
no, they don't.
they're like 20 minutes. You know, the Arkansas River, those locks take forever.
Yeah, and it's not like the stuff on the TVA either.
When the barge goes, yeah, well, the Arkansas River and the TVA are kind of the same. When a barge goes through there,
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry.
it might be it might be an hour and a half to 2 hours before they're done.
Yeah, well, those locks so stuff on Ohio.
Did I lose you?
I'm back.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, yeah. We have storms coming through, so
Oh, okay. The sun just came out here finally, first time all day.
um. Okay, well, we're about 35 after the hour. So, Brandon, do you have any shout outs you'd like to do?
Oh, not really. I mean, I've been with Falcon Rods for a while. You guys should check them out. They've been really good to me. I've been using them for the last 10 years and haven't had any reason to even think about changing. Check out Temptation Tackle. It's a buddy of mine out of Kansas City. He's got anything you could want. Custom colors. If you can't find the color, you can send him the color and he can make it and put it in any bait you want. Check out Clutch Swim Bait Company. Like I said, Josh up there. Just keep an eye out. He does drops monthly, and those darters and those OGs they'll sell out in 5 minutes. So you got to be ready to pull the trigger when they hit the website. But other than that, that's all I got.
Well, okay. Well, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're a working man, so thank you for coming on to the Bassin Magazine podcast.
Yeah,
Guys,
thanks for having me.
you're very welcome. Guys, Bassin Magazine is the official magazine of the Weekend Angler. You know what? It's Wednesday. Make your plans, go fishing, get out there, have some fun. You only get to do this once. And Brandon, stick around. I'm going to end the podcast with that. Thank you for tuning in, guys.